background is I started off as a clinical psychiatrist, and I specialized actually in suicide prevention. And for 25 years, none of my patients killed themselves. And then I expanded that to training FBI and police hostage negotiators. And then I expanded that to coaching, advising, conflict resolution, anything having to do with people guessing that you're listening for something that will help you be able to close more new clients, so you don't have to keep searching for them. And also, you're probably listening for something that would make your current situation less stressful, because we're all overwhelmed by stress. And like the Russian audience, you're also listening for something that's immediately doable by you that's not jumbled up in jargon or gobbledygook. My hope is that you leaned in and said, wow, this guy gets me, and I didn't tell him anything. And that you leaned in towards me. And the leaning in towards me means that I was able to connect with you where you're at. And now the key is, how would I build momentum now that I've gotten you to lean in towards me? With the momentum hopefully resulting in how soon can you start, and how do you like to get paid? And so what I said to the audience, and I'm saying to you, is you're listening for something that you regret saying yes to. One day, 1 week, 1 month from now. And because you've said yes before and been wrong and been taken on the carpet and told you were wrong. I said, also, what you're listening to underneath that is, and this is what you want to activate in people, you're also listening for what you would regret saying no to 1 day, 1 week, 1 month from now. And what might that be? Well, let's say if you're providing a solution to a prospect or client, why would they regret saying no to you 1 day, 1 week, 1 month from now? It's because they have a problem to be solved. If they say no, they still have to solve the problem. If it looks like you really got to know them and you got granular and you got to know them more deeply in what the problem was, they have to go through the whole thing all over again with someone else who may not be that granular. So they're going to have to repeat the whole thing all over again, which may be why they might want to say, they might regret saying no to. Also, when I speak to B2B audiences, sellers and buyers are always reporting to a boss. And so if you're a buyer of B2B services, or if you're selling your services in a B2B situation, they'd regret saying no if they passed on not just the solution, a problem that they need to solve, but if you had a product or a service that their competitor bought, and because their competitor bought it, they lapped the field, their boss is going to come back to them and say, didn't you meet with so-and-so and they were selling this kind of service or providing this kind of product? And the buyer is going to say, yeah, well, you said no to it and our competitor bought them and they're killing us out there, killing in a good way. And so what you want to activate in people is that they regret saying no to you more than they regret saying yeah. So raise your hand if you're tracking with me in this. People following this? Now in the presentation, the Russians, and you might say, okay, I get it. So what's the 6 about? You said 1116. Tell me what the 6 is about. I said, well, the 6 is interesting, is that Um, if you say yes and regret it 1 day, 1 week, 1 month from now, what you're really going to regret is if it's 6 months from now, when you get a performance review, your boss says, that was really a bad judgment call. That was a bad decision. Can't give you the raise. Can't give you the promotion because I had to do damage control because you said yes to it. So that's what they're trying to avoid, that boss will say, you really made it difficult for our department. And what's the 6 in the no department is if 6 months from now, that's a boss says, that thing you said no to would have been a game changer. The thing you said no to really cost us a big opportunity. And now we're playing catch up. And you really need to be able to discern when things come to us and not pass on something that's going to be a game changer. Now, in between all that, there is unconsciously, whoever you're talking to, the real yes, which is out of their awareness. But if in their mind this activates, they're going to want to work with you. And that is that 6 months from now, after you've said yes, after your client has said yes, that their boss takes them aside and say, you know that thing you said yes to? And they, of course, they think they're in trouble, like all of us think we're in trouble. And they say to their boss, yeah. And the boss said, that was the single best decision we've made in the company in 5 years. And I'm getting a huge raise and promotion, and I'm taking you with me. So that's like the grand slam home run. So what I'm really trying to do is to help switch your orientation to being curious about what people are listening for. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to be this empathic psychologist type. You can just pause because, by the way, it's almost always the same 3 things. I want to get better results because better results means, better compensation, promotion. I want to be able to do it in a way that's not overly stressful. And I want it to be doable by me. I don't want it to be just another thing that I learned that's interesting, but I can't implement. So you're still tracking with me? Is this relevant, or people staying awake still? Good. So I'm going to give you some, and Don's actually going to share an article that I wrote called "The Secret to Closing More Sales." Never answer a question in the first conversation. What does that mean? So as you're talking to people, obviously you're there. If you're a professional service provider, you're there ostensibly because they have a problem or a challenge that needs to be solved. That's why you're meeting. And what you want to focus on as they're talking, and I may actually demonstrate this if we get to the Q&A, what you want to focus on is hyperbole, such as amazing, awful, terrific, horrible. So you want to focus on when you hear hyperbole or they raise their voice in intensity, because that is the tip of the iceberg, and underneath the iceberg is a lot more emotional juice on it. So if someone telling you about a situation and you pick up the word horrible, awful, it would be amazing if, you let them finish whatever they're saying. And here's also something I hope you'll take from this. After someone is speaking to you, look them in the eye, pause for 2 seconds, and they're going to be curious. And then before you speak, go, And what means is I took in what you said and I considered it. And see, the pause is going to create a little awkwardness on purpose. But then when you go and you go, and means I'm tasting it. I'm taking it in. So that's positive. That reassures them that they weren't foolish or they weren't incomprehensible. And then when you pause and take that in, they're going to feel that you considered what they said. And no matter what they say, they might ask you a question. You can say, I could answer that question, but say more about the amazing. They're going to go, huh? Yeah, say more about the amazing. But what of a hyperbole they used? Or say more about the challenging. And then what's going to happen is it's going to shift it from being transactional to something else. And they're going to go deeper. And if you develop this skill and you're watching them, even on Zoom, as you see them going deeper, what's happening is they're opening up more to you. They're opening up more to you than your competition. In my book, Just Listen, there's various things. One of the things that I talk about are conversation deeper. So one of them is say more about that. Another conversation deepener when they say something, and again, what you want to do is open them up beyond what anyone else opens up. And so another conversation deepener is to lean in and go, really? Not really, but really. And so that's basically saying they're on track, they're relevant, they're not being inarticulate, tell me more. And so by doing this, you're opening them up more and more, revealing more and more than they intended to. Now, the more that they reveal, the more they're going to feel relief at first because they're getting stuff off their chest, but that's going to switch into anxiety and maybe even a little paranoia. And they might say, so what do you think? Now, sometimes that what do you think is what's your solution. But I will tell you, unconsciously, after you've opened someone up more deeply than they usually go and they say, what do you think? What they're really unconsciously thinking is, what do you think of me? Did I make sense? Do I even know what I'm talking about? Was this a waste of your time? That's what's going on unconsciously. And then you can say to them, and this is after they've opened up more and more. You could say, I can tell you what I think. Now, something I do, and you'd have to modify it, but I'm a medical doctor, so I get away with this. I could tell you what I think, but I'd like to take our conversation to the ICU. And again, they look at me like, what is that about? And I say, well, ICU doesn't stand for intensive care unit in our conversation. It stands for important, critical, and urgent. And again, they're going to go, what? But the what is not standing off. The what is you've captured their mind. And you could say, I was listening for what is important, critical, and urgent to you. Importance a year from now. Critical is maybe 3 to 6 months. Urgent's like today. And I could guess what you said that fit those things, but why don't you fill me in? Instead of me guessing, and maybe we didn't cover them, what is important to your company and to you and your personal success? What's critical? What's urgent? Because what you really want to do is focus them on what is urgent. Can you see what's happening? What you've done is by having them go deeper using the hyperbole inflection thing, and when they open up, they've gotten all this stuff off their chest. But then when you take them to the important, critical, urgent, you've given them all that relief, but then you focus them on priorities. So that's been an incredible service. You've opened them up, which they felt good about because nobody opens them up. And then you brought them back to the highest priority. And then they will tell you, and then you can go into the say more about that. So they'll tell you more about the important, critical, or urgent situation. And you say more, but what makes that important? What makes that urgent? What'll happen if you don't get that taken care of? What have you tried to get that taken care of? How is that working for you? So there's all kinds of things, that you can learn if you get my book, Just Listen,